Hello, everybody. This is the Montessori Show, the May 2017 edition. I am Jeanne-Marie Paynel, speaking to you live from San Diego. And Simone is here with me. Hi, Simone. How are things?
Hi, Jeanne-Marie. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm calling it in from Amsterdam, and it's evening over here, and the rain has stopped. It's all good.
It seems to be lighter though, because oftentimes when we do this, it's very dark. It seems like days are getting longer, which is good.
Already in May, it can be light still at 9 o'clock in the evening, which for me is very funny because it's more moderate in Sydney, where I'm from, where normally it would get dark by 8 o'clock even in the middle of summer. So, but I like the long days. It's nice.
Yes. It's the same here. It gets dark sooner, than when I'm in France, where you can stay strolling out in the evening late at night, which I love.
Cool. And today I'm looking forward to talking about siblings with you.
Yes, siblings. We love our brothers and sisters, but it seems to be, somewhat of an issue for families at times of how they get along, how they don't get along, and so forth. So yes, excited to talk about that. We have a lot of questions that came in before the show that we will be answering. And if you have any questions for either Simone and I, please use the chat box. The chat box, unfortunately, can only be used when you are on YouTube on your computer, on your laptop. It does not work on the phone. But so we're looking forward to answering all of your questions.
Very cool.
And let us know when you come in and where you're from. We are just kind of hanging out here and waiting for more people to show up before we start with our questions.
Yeah, it's just got to 8 o'clock, which is pretty much starting time.
Yes, and we oftentimes start a few minutes. Here we go. We have some people coming in. Caroline from Estonia, welcome. It's funny because we've done this many times, and I just get the giggles every time when people start signing on and telling us where they're from, because I just love how we're able to share this information with people from all over the world, and that there's interest about Montessori and positive discipline all over the world. So it's pretty sweet.
I think siblings is a really interesting topic, because I was reading that siblings are often the longest relationship we're going to have in our lifetimes. That's longer than your marriages. It's longer than your relationship with your parents. And so, yeah, like you say, love them or hate them. You actually it's nice in a Montessori approach, for me anyway, you may disagree on things, but how you can live together. So yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into the questions. It was obviously a very interesting topic for people too, because we've had a lot of questions arrive.
That is such a good point about the longest relationship, because it's so true. Our parents might pass, and it's our siblings that will be with us and such. So yes, such an important relationship for sure.
While some of the people are still jumping on the call, I think it might be nice to talk about the introduction to Siblings Without Rivalry. They have a great little anecdote in that book. And when I read it and I was expecting my second baby, I was like, okay, now I'm going to be much more sensitive to my elder child's needs right now. So the story goes, okay, so imagine that your partner comes home one day and they say, hey, sweetie, I love you so much that I'm thinking of getting another wife, husband, partner. And you'd be like, huh? And they'd be like, no, I'm going to keep you as well. But I just love you so much that we're going to, they're going to move in, and they're going to take your old bed, and they can take half of your old clothes. And, you'd be like, what is going on? Like, how can you love me and someone else? So I think that it's really, you make sure you be able to put yourself in your child's shoes. And if they are having difficulty adjusting to a new baby, it might be a more sensitive thing to not say, I love you so much, and we're going to get another baby. You might want to present it in a different way. So that might be interesting too. I think also another beautiful way that you can talk about introducing a new baby and how your love can be shared is that lovely Jane Nelson idea of lighting candles. Would you like to tell everybody about that one too?
Yes, I love this It's really an exercise that we can do, an activity that we can do with the older sibling to really explain this whole notion that love is infinite, that it's not because there's a new baby that has arrived that I'm going to love you less or have less love for you. And so it's a story that basically, let's say that there are two children. There is a sibling, maybe a 4-year-old, and they've just welcomed a new baby brother. Okay, so the parent, one of the parents, and both parents can be there, everybody can be there together, and basically you're going to get as many candles as you need for the number of individuals in the family. And one of the parents starts and explains how, and she lights the candle. So let's say this is mom, lights the candle and says, this is me. This is my love and the love that I have for life and the world and for myself, and puts the candle in a candle holder. Then takes another candle, and this represents Daddy, and lights the candle with her flame. So when we met each other, I gave some of my love to Daddy. And look I still have my own love. And puts the Daddy candle in the placeholder. And then gets another candle. And this is the candle that represents you, speaking to the older sibling. And lights it again with the mommy candle. And look and I have enough love for you. And I still have enough love for Daddy, and I still have enough love for myself. And puts the candle in the candle holder. And then takes the little candle, which is the new little sibling, and lights it again with the mommy candle. And again, there's still enough light. There's still enough love for me. There's still enough love for Daddy. There's still love for you. And now there's love for your baby brother. Because love is just, we always, have more, and to love each person that comes into our life. And what I love is that she says at the end, does this help you understand that I love you just as much as I love your baby brother? And the little girl says, yes, and I can love lots of people just the same. So it's just a beautiful, I think, kind of a little ritual that we can do just to explain, and you can do it every once in a while just to remind the children that they are loved just as much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. A very common question that I get asked is, how much you should step in to sibling disputes, and we'll have a few of the questions come in that are about that. But there's kind of like not definitive answers, but definitely a scale from like, okay, low level bickering, I would actually just go walk out of the room and let them work it out themselves. Make sure they see you, but just leave and know they can work that out themselves. And then once it starts to get a bit more energetic, you might need to explain a ground rule, for example. So it might be, for example, if they're play fighting, I'm allowing play fighting, but we have a rule in our house that if someone says stop, then that really means like, yeah, they don't want to do it anymore, because no is kind of like, that's what you say when someone tickles you, but they're kind of having fun. But so then maybe I might say, I hear someone saying stop. And I'm just like that voice of reason outside, so I can just remind them of what rule kind of it is. And then if it escalates further and they're really hurting each other, then it's definitely like, I'm going to separate you. And it's not blaming whoever's, any either of them, but it's just like, okay, you go to your room and you go to your room if they're older children, or here, you go on this side of the couch and you go on that side of the couch, and you just physically separate them. So there's different escalations. At most, I would try and just stay away from interfering in sibling disputes. For example, the other day, my kids are older now, but we woke up, we were making our breakfast, and my daughter started humming some song at the dining table, and my son was like, Emma, stop humming. And Emma's going, but I want to hum. And he's going, Emma, it's driving me crazy. And I'm just like, okay, this is interesting. I'm just wanting for some peace during my breakfast, and I'm just going to go and get some milk from the fridge. And all of a sudden I heard him say, well, it's kind of just the melody that's bothering me. Can't you think of something else to hum? And she goes, well, what about this? And then she started like humming something else, and they're like, oh, I like that one. It had only been resolved before I just had to go to the fridge to kind of take some breaths, not interfere into the argument.
Yes,
So
yes. And I think you bring up a really good point to me in the whole sibling thing, is really to treat them as equals, of I trust that you two can figure this out, or I trust that you children can figure this out, as opposed to us feeling like we always have to intervene and say, not say, one is wrong and one is right, but just when we're intervening, we kind of take sides in a way. So it's really about just, I really have faith that you two can figure this out,
and
find those solutions.
And people will say, oh, well, that's fine. Your kids are older. They can negotiate that. But I had the same thing when my son was 2 years old and my daughter was 9 months old, and they were both pulling at the same car. And I'm like, I know you guys can work this out. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, maybe I'm going to have to get another car for Emma to play with, or maybe, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, Oliver took apart the truck and gave her the back wheels, and he kept the front wheels, and they're both sitting there like really happy with their solution. And I was like, oh, they can come up with solutions from a really young age. So, and something much more creative than I would have come up with. I was thinking I was going to have to negotiate taking turns or taking the toy away, and I didn't have to do anything.
Very true.
So it's good.
Very true. Should we start going into some of the specific questions?
Oh, absolutely. And I see that there's some comments coming in through as well.
Yes. And I'm answering them. So let's see here. We have Jennifer, who has twins that are going to be 3 in August, and really is struggling with wanting to implement Montessori, wanting to give lessons, but the two of them kind of disputing the attention during the lesson, and then once the lesson is given, kind of fighting over who's going to do it first. Any thoughts on that?
Well, actually, just before the call, you were talking about, are there many twins in my classroom? And we have a lot of twins at the moment, and I treat them very much like 2 children in the classroom. So, and as she's doing homeschooling, I would think of them as just 2 kids who are going to get a lesson. And in the classroom, you might give a lesson to 2 children, but you would never let them interrupt each other. You would very clearly say someone's having a turn and then the other person's having a turn. And it's okay for you to set those limits, just remain very calm. Again, I always say to my parents, be Switzerland, because Switzerland was neutral in the war. And so you don't take sides. You can definitely name feelings for each of the child, but you just can very impartially go between the two. So I would present the lesson. If it's really they're interrupting each other all the time, they're at 3, they should start to be getting to maybe not interrupt each other all the time. Then I would try and maybe do lessons apart and see if that helps. But what you do with the other one, and if they're going to keep busy during the whole thing, I don't know if that would work. It depends on how they go together. Some twins stick together a lot, and in my experience, some can play independently for a while and then they come back and meet up for 10 minutes and then they'll go apart again. So you have to see, maybe there's moments in the day where the children are apart, one of them's napping, and those kind of things, or one of them might go to the bathroom, and then you could take an opportunity to do a lesson individually. But when they're fighting over who gets to have the lesson first, I would just say, whoever was starting first, oh, it looks like Joshua's having a turn first. Yeah, it will be available soon. And then if the other child's really still interrupting, oh, you're having a hard time touching it. Yeah, you really wanted to have a turn too. And just empathize with him, but not let him then take over. And not thinking I have to have 2 of everything in the classroom either, because actually they should learn to take turns. You might want to have 2 potties, because that's maybe something you don't want them to have to wait for. But I wouldn't have 2 of even the spray bottles for cleaning the windows and things. They can learn to take turns. And the more they hear that, oh, it will be available soon, it will be available soon, they really, my kids always were saying to each other, available soon. And they weren't even 2 years old, but they were trying to spit out these words because it was something that they heard me say very calmly and giving the skills to deal with it. So that they can do it.
And I would maybe also suggest, and 3 is, you know, kind of that threshold of them starting to have the reason and all of this. But I think talking to the two of them, you know, and just letting them know, sharing with them that when, you know, when you're giving a lesson, it's important that, you know, you need to focus on just one at a time, or that, you know, I'm going to show your brother or your sister this, and then it will be your turn, kind of, but talking about it more in a family setting type of way beforehand, and maybe having cues to remind them, like, you know, it's not quite your turn yet, and such, and being, you know, vigilant to give equal opportunity to both. But I like your suggestion about maybe presenting separately, so making sure one child has an activity going, and then you can present just one-on-one.
And something that I've noticed anyway, the more that I work in Montessori, the less I'm doing so many formal presentations. Oh, now we're going to go over and do the flower arranging. If they're showing interest in the flower arranging, I'll just step in where they're up to. We do a little, we improvise that short bit that they're interested in. Then they take over and I just step back. And often I don't need these formal presentations, but I'm using all my formal presentation skills, all the training, so that I can improvise the little bits where they're interested. So that can also be, if you just have a free work period for 3 hours and follow their interests, then hopefully, you know, they're working independently in different parts of your home, and then you can actually give them one-on-one help more. Maybe that is also good, because at 3, you know, they may not be ready for a full, you know, 15-step lesson.
Exactly, which is about when they you know, are usually welcome into the primary environment, which are a little bit more formal and long. And I know, like, the big difference with the, you know, presenting in the primary with the 3 to 6 and with the toddlers is that you never get through the entire lesson with the toddler. Like, they want to jump in and start doing it right away, as opposed to the primary, you even ask the child to hold back from actually doing the activity until you are completely done. So you're really modeling that whole, you know, taking turn. And you know, my language was really, it's my turn first, and then you can, you know, do it. And I would go through the whole presentation, and then it would be their turn. So it is the little age and maturity thing that also, you know, hopefully with them becoming 3 and a little bit, having a little bit more self-control there will help.
And one other thing I thought of is also, I always think it's important to have spaces in your environment where they can go if they don't want to be disturbed by the other one, because sometimes a child will be really trying to focus and the other one's interrupting them. And it can work both ways. Sometimes it's an older child interrupting the younger child. It doesn't have to always be a younger child interrupting the older one. Mm-hmm. And in twins, it could work either way. So there's maybe they could sit at the dining table. Maybe they could take something to their room. Maybe they can make a cubby house with a blanket over the back of some chairs. So it's always creating space. They might want to make a sign and they write it saying, you know, quiet time or something like this, because my daughter, for example, needs a lot more quiet time than my son. And so he'd always say, she never wants to play with me. And I'd say, oh, Emma, would you like to, you know, talk to him about that? And then she'd say, it's not that I don't want to play with you, I just don't want to play with you now. And then so that I just need to say, is there a time that you'll be available? And then when she could put a time on it, obviously they're a little bit older, again, then he felt, oh, it's not that she doesn't want to play with me, it's just not right now.
Right.
So
right.
Those kind of things might be useful too.
Point. Very good point. The next question is from Angela, and she is really asking, is it important or beneficial to create one-on-one time with children in a large family? She has 3 children, 7, 5.5, and 3.5. And her 5.5-year-old is demonstrating some challenging behaviors. So we feel that it might be because, you know, lack of positive interaction or an empty emotional bucket. So it's really this notion of creating special time, one-on-one time with each children. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely like to. It's not always easy, but definitely. And it might be, if both parents are around on the weekend, that you can take one child out for Saturday morning a walk, or to the local cafe, or do something that you like doing together. And I know that at the beginning it feels like your younger one gets dragged along to everything, but actually I found that I got to spend quite a lot of time one-on-one with my younger one once my older one was at school. So it does even out sometimes in terms of ages and things like that as well. But
Yes.
if there is a special time that they know it's going to be special mummy time or special daddy time, then you could write down a notebook. Oh, you really wanted to work on your party invitations, and right now I'm cooking the dinner and getting such and such, this. That's right in the notebook, so that when we go to the cafe on Saturday morning, we can work on your invitations, and then they really know that that's important and that kind of thing. I mean, emotional buckets for me are really important, and I like to always say, wake up in the morning and allow 10-15 minutes just to read books, cuddle and things before you even ask them to put on any clothes or make breakfast, because you will find that the cooperation increases when their emotional buckets are full. And sometimes one child's going to need some more love at that moment. They're having a difficult time. So yeah, don't worry that at the moment you're spending more time with one child, because it will even out over the long term, and they'll realize, oh, yeah, mum really helps her, and when I really need help, then I'll get help too.
Yes, yes, and it's true, when we know that we're going to have that special one-on-one time, it's also wonderful when we're seeing some sort of, behavior of, oh, you're really wanting all of my attention right now, but, I'm not able to right now. But remember, we have our special date, tomorrow morning or whenever, so that there is still that connection, and you can remind them. So to answer Angela's question, yes, I really think, and Simone agrees, is that it is important and very beneficial to be able to create one-on-one time with our children, as well as with our parenting partners. So I always kind of stress that one too, but we've got to remember the adults in our lives as well, and special time for ourselves, that special self-care time too.
One thing that I think is also worth noting is she's going to say, okay, well, that's quite tricky to actually practically make special time for each of them. But it can sometimes be as simple as going to the shops together. So you're going to the supermarket anyway. Oh, do you guys want to, do one of you want to come with me? And then while you're walking along, it's like, hey, special mummy time. And we're going to the shops, but it always seems to work, because you can chat while you're going to the supermarket to do the groceries and connect, and like, oh, what would you like to choose the dessert we're going to make tonight, and get them involved that way. So maybe extra, even just doing like some of the food prep to get them in the kitchen more and chat to you while you're doing some food prep together, that can also help.
Definitely, and trying to find what are those different individual interests they have, and being able to share that, because maybe not everybody likes to, I don't know, go to the museum or do something that is specific to the child, and trying to find that special thing is really ideal. So yes, if you're able to manage it, definitely very, very good thing to do. So the next question is from Valentina, and she says, I have two boys. One is 14 months and the other is 3.5. How can I help them play together? Sometimes they seem really interested in playing together, but because of the difference in age, the experience almost always ends up in crying and disappointment. The older one wants to control the little one, and the little one is not able to follow the rules of the games. So any thoughts on that?
I love it, actually, because it sounds very familiar. And I think that it's nice when they start to play together. You're like, oh, this is really interesting. But you do need supervision at this stage, that you can be watching and observing and seeing when it's starting to escalate, and maybe even stepping in before it escalates, so you can hear then when the child's not following the rules, it means they don't understand. So then you're like, maybe you could step in and say, oh, do you need some help? Maybe we can play together so that we can follow the rules, and maybe help the younger one a little bit to play along. Or, oh, actually, it looks like that such and such isn't understanding. Is there another way you can explain? I can hear you saying it over and over again. Or translating for them. It's like, oh, you really want them to play that, and she really isn't interested in following the rules. And so translating for them is really useful, because again, you're not stepping in, and it takes some time. But once they realize that it's not always going to end in a big argument, or that mum's there to support me even, when I'm losing it, then actually I think you'll find that the meltdowns hopefully will decrease. And also not being worried if it does. It's like, oh, they're just having great, it's a kind of conflict resolution training and they're getting this from a very young age.
And I really like, what you're sharing in the language, because you're not labeling one as, oh, you're older, you should understand, and he's younger, doesn't understand. It's really about kind of modeling, how to have cooperation, and just and that to me is the best model that you can give them, is really giving them the tools to be able to find cooperation as opposed to competition.
Yeah, teaching skills, I think, is something that we want to solve the problem, but actually we just need to keep teaching skills. Oh, they got it wrong. Okay, I need to teach it again. Like saying you'll be available soon if they want to take turns, or, oh, it sounds like he doesn't want to play right now. You can say, I don't feel like playing right now. And the labels thing is really interesting. The older one, the roles we play. There's the book that I keep referring to is Siblings Without Rivalry by Weber Maslich. I'll put the link in the notes in case people don't know it. And they have a whole chapter on not putting children into roles, and also what if a child puts themselves into a role, like I'm the big kid or I'm the big meanie, and then giving them another vision of themselves as well. So like, oh, and you can be a kindie too, that kind of thing. Or just because you're the oldest one, think they're only 2 years old and they're getting put in this position of responsibility. Like you say, you go to the toilet and you say, oh, will you look after the baby for me? And actually that's a lot of responsibility for a 2-year-old. And if you're popping out, you could just say, oh, will you guys look after each other? And kind of very much equalizing it, and sometimes giving the younger child like the responsibility, oh, will you help me unload the dishwasher, instead of expecting that the older one's going to do it. And not trying to compare them. That just builds the sibling rivalry, which is like, oh, eat your peas nicely like your brother. You don't even mean to intentionally, but they do. They're just like, oh yeah, my brother's the perfect one. That's what's going on in their head, the story. So instead, if they're saying they're not wanting to eat their peas, just focus on the one child. Oh, we have a rule in our house that we try some peas, or something, like whatever your rule is. But you just focus on that child, not compare it to the older one or the younger one or the one who can eat the peas best.
Yes, and very important, because you bring up a really very good point, is that the whole, comparing the siblings to each other is not a good idea. Not a good idea, because I think they do it kind of on their own already, just by seeing. And if we as the parents kind of put more competition into that relationship, is just not a very healthy one.
Yeah, there's someone in the chat room who says, I'm very impressed. I'm guilty of seeing the bigger one as the perpetrator and the little one as a victim lately. I'll try harder next time. And it's really true, because you walk into the room and the baby's crying, but you don't actually know that the baby didn't go over and take something off the older one. You don't know what went on. So all you can do is say, oh, I see that you're crying and you've got a stick in your hand. That's all that you can really say, is describe what you see. If you can't say anything nice, don't say it at all. Because if you say, what happened here? They just go, he did it. You're just basically asking them to blame the person, and that's just not going to lead you to any conflict resolution at all.
So true. Alrighty, so let's go on to the next question. So Jennifer, my 2-year-old is taking toys from her 11-month-old brother. We use her language like this is Jasper's work, and walk away like she knows from her Montessori school, but to no avail. Please help. We'd love to let them sort it, but the 11-month-old doesn't have the words yet.
Yeah, so for those people who don't have kids in a Montessori school, often the rule kind of in a Montessori classroom is that whoever's working with something, they can work with it for as long as they like, and that we share by taking turns, so that when they're finished, they put it back on the shelf and then it's available for the next person. And so it might be that you might need to translate for the 11-month-old. So, oh, he's pulling at that. He's saying, I'm still working with it. Yeah, he's really wanting to finish his turn. Oh, you're finding it hard. And then maybe you just need to use your gentle hands to maybe take her hands away to say, I'm not sure why I'm thinking that, oh yeah, it is an older girl. to hold her hands and say, I can't let you touch it. Yeah, you're really wanting to pull at it. You're pulling at my hands now, and doing the commentary about how you're taking her hands away. But really, when you can be consistent and set that boundary, she is 2, so it's not super old. So they're also learning to take turns. It's a very egocentric time, a 2-year-old. They're in toddler world. They're also wanting to master things. Whatever's in someone else's hands seems always more interesting. You know, I don't even know if you've ever been at a dinner party and someone picks up a paperclip and starts fiddling with it, and all of a sudden you want to start fiddling with the paperclip too. I mean, I actually really empathize with why it's more attractive when someone else is playing with it, because you're like, oh yeah, I haven't played with that one yet. So it can be hard, but when they learn that it will be available, that they're not going to play with the Play-Doh forever, they'll get a turn too, and that kind of thing, then that can help, I think. Also, but maybe not jumping in every time, seeing what happens. There's a really interesting article by Janet Lansbury. Do you follow her, Jeanne-Marie?
Yes, very much so.
And she sometimes tries to say, let children solve these problems. Maybe they come up with a better solution. Maybe they look like they're chasing each other and then they end up having a really fun game by chasing each other after the initial thing. So yeah, it's not always a perfect option. And if it's always the same child who's having their toy taken off them, then I teach again skills like, oh, you can say it'll be available soon. And of course the younger one won't be able to always say it, but you keep modeling it until they can.
Right. It's really about helping both children to have the proper communication tools, really, and to really help the child maybe whose toys are always being given away is saying, no, that's not okay. It's really, to me, as opposed to coming to their defense, it's more important to give them the tools so they can defend themselves, because we're not going to always be there to, take sides, which you shouldn't be doing in the first place. But you know what I mean. It's like you need to give them the tools to be able to resolve these situations themselves.
Mm-hmm. And even like maybe teaching some skills to the older one. Oh, you're wanting to touch Jasper's work again. Yeah, what can you do when you really want to touch it? Can you sit on your hands? Can you put them under your armpits? What should we do with them? I don't know, because some Montessori schools have that they have their hands under the table, some things like this as well. So it's basically teaching their skills, because they're trying not to eat the marshmallow. I love that marshmallow experiment. Yes. Where they say to kids, okay, if you can either have this marshmallow now, or if you wait 5 minutes, then you can have 2 marshmallows. And then they go out of the room and they watch these kids trying not to eat the marshmallow. And it's like that. They're basically having to build up their self-control, and that's part of it. And some parents say, oh, my child is just, like, they come in on the first day and they say, my child keeps touching everybody else's work. And I'm like, that's why you're here. They're here to learn how not to touch other kids' toys. Exactly. If they already knew it, maybe you wouldn't need to come to Montessori Playgroup. Yeah. So we're also seeing, we want it to be fixed straight away, but it's the learning process, and it might,
It's a learning process, and it's, you have to also have age-appropriate expectations of these little humans that have, only been on the planet for just a few years, and that, all of these skills, some adults are still, trying to figure them out and learn them. So to be patient and to kind of, not always have these expectations of they should be sharing and such, which to me also brings up the point about sharing. I know that this, it kind of goes with the topic of siblings, is I truly believe, and I'd love to have your take on this, but that we cannot force young children to share. That is something that will come with time. As you said, they're very egocentric, and they're in their bubble, and everything belongs to them. I mean, the moon, the sun, everything is theirs. So to again have this expectation of you need to share, and please share, that's a concept that is going to come with time, and that will come from them. I don't believe in forcing young children to share.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. That's the Montessori approach, I think, as well. And I think a lot of people also expect that kids are going to play together very young, and it doesn't always happen. If you guys come to a toddler class, they're often doing a lot of parallel play. And siblings will probably play together a bit sooner because they're around each other 24/7. But yeah, it also takes some time for them to be able to play together in,
Yes.
that's closer to 3, you know, when they're interested in doing that. And we're always, even in my preschooler class, when they're waiting to start school, there's little things that come up all the time. So one child says, oh yeah, I'd like to play Play-Doh with my friend. And then all of a sudden they change their mind halfway through. And then we're practicing and modeling words. Oh, you've changed your mind? Would you like to tell her? Oh, I've changed my mind. Now I'd like to try. Oh, she really still wants to play with you. Yeah, and then you kind of like practicing and modeling for them how they might be able to solve a conflict. So I don't think it was a bad thing. I always think, oh, this is an opportunity for learning.
Yeah, no, and I love how you end up being kind of the translator of, you know, their emotions and what's going on. So love that. Okay, so then we have a question from Sabine. She has a 4.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. The older one is often jealous of the younger one and then starts hitting or pushing her. Often they play nicely together, and then if there's something the older one doesn't approve of, she immediately starts hitting the younger one. How can I teach her other means of reacting to some situations? So, I mean, I think you kind of touched on that, but if you could, you know, maybe specifically about that whole hitting and using our words.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the Montessori approach and this positive discipline is to allow all these feelings. So, you know, the older one doesn't like what's going on, so she's allowed to express these feelings, but she's not allowed to do all the behavior. So you're allowed to set a limit on that. Okay, but it's not okay to hit her. I can see that you really didn't like what happened, but it's not okay to hit. And you can just be very clear on that thing. Like, I can't let you hit her. I can't let you hit her. And you can hit these cushions, or you can use your words, you know, you can give her options of what she might do, but she just needs a very clear message that it's not going to be okay to hit. And you can separate both of them, you know, when you start to see things being physical, because one, you want to keep one child by, you know, to keep one child safe. So if you see that they're really in a hitting phase, you might just need to shadow more so you can step in and keep them both safe. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Because, you know, you're still, it's, you know, we talk a lot about not intervening and trying to let them to figure things out, but there's sometimes where you do have to intervene. You are still the one in charge and kind of the leader in modeling these things. So when, you know, when it does get out of hand and you really, you know, witness and say, I see that you two are really having a hard time, you know, being in the same room together, I need to take you apart. And these are, to me, also conversations that we have outside of the moment, where it's, again, you know, when we're talking about how the day went or such, we can say, I've noticed that, you know, sometimes, you know, your sister is playing with something and you don't like it and you hit. And so what are some other ways that we could use so that, and also reminding that if I see that you are really hurting, I have to physically remove you from the room, so that we know ahead of time, what the child knows ahead of time what to expect.
Yeah, because when they flip their lid, when they aren't rational anymore, when they're emotional, you can't have that conversation. So exactly. I love Dan Siegel's work, because he's saying if they're in right brain emotional mode, you have to speak right brain emotional language until they calm down. So then you can connect first. Yeah, you're really sad with how that worked out. But you know, you're physically removing them because you have to keep them safe. Also, in the positive discipline tools, I think we've talked about Jane Nelson's work about creating a calm space for a child to go to. So that's an opportunity for them to both go to calm spaces. It's not to punish them, but it's a place where they can go, they can read books if they like reading books, they can play with trains, they can go into a tent, whatever they find would help them get calm. And then they might need to make amends. So if they broke something or they hurt someone, then that making amends when they come back is really important. Otherwise, you're just allowing all the behavior. You need to, you know, make sure that they take responsibility as well if something actually did go down. But that can only happen when they're back in left brain and the left brain's operational again.
Yes, definitely. We have one question in the chat about how to educate other parents so they don't expect your child to share. And I think that's a really good question, because I hear that a lot with, you know, parents telling other children that they have to share, or telling their own children that they have to share. How do you explain it to the parents of young children in your community?
Yeah, I usually think that the other parents, as long as they hear their child's going to get a turn, then it's okay. So you could say, oh yeah, Johnny's having a turn right now and you can have a turn next, you know, and so usually then that's fine. I think they get worried that some kids hogging it and they're never going to get a turn. And in a Montessori playgroup, they can play with it as long as they like. But maybe if you're at your playground and you just wouldn't swing, you know, for 10 minutes until your child's finished, maybe you count backwards from 10 to show, okay, yeah, we're going to share by taking turns, but we're going to finish our turn a little bit before we would have liked because we're in a common place where there's limited, you know, swings, this kind of thing. So I'm usually translating for the kids, but hearing and also meeting the needs of the other parent, that they just want to hear that their child's going to get a turn too. Oh yeah, Johnny's just finishing and then you can have your turn, no problem. Because in Holland they have an expression that's called samen delen, samen spelen, which means everyone share together, everyone play together. And it basically means that you're expected to be able to share. But it means that, yeah, it doesn't respect the child who's working with something and has it taken out of their hands.
Right.
And so,
right.
yeah, it is a hot one.
It is a hot one. It is a hot one because parents don't always agree on that one. So it's a hard one. So I have some other questions here.
Jeanne-Marie, before we jump into the last few questions that have come in, do you remember we were talking about room sharing as well? Because you had some thoughts about room sharing, which might be useful as well.
Yes, and this is more for welcoming a new sibling into the home because, you know, the whole sibling relationship starts the day that probably when you start sharing the notion that they are going to become a brother or sister. But I really like the idea of room sharing, at least, you know, if the older child already has their own room, that the newborn is going to be sharing the space with them from the very beginning. And this is actually something that I did for my own two children, and that was actually recommended by a pediatrician, and it made sense to me, and it worked really well, which is my daughter was 4 when I brought home a little brother for her. And instead of keeping the little brother in my room and you know, having this different you know, relationship, I actually put her brother in her room and said, you know, this is your brother, and we had already made a space for him and such. And so, yes, it was a little bit more work for me where, you know, the night feeding, I would get up and go nurse in their bedroom. And what it did is that it gave the opportunity for the older one to know that it was okay. Her brother was being taken care of because, you know, the first few nights she did wake up when he was crying. And honestly, she woke up maybe the 2 first nights and then never woke up again. But there was never any of that jealousy because it was, you know, this is a baby that needs to be taken care of. So mom's going to come and take care of it. And it wasn't, you know, he's in mommy's room and that's really not fair. So to me, if that's at all possible, I really, really encourage kind of the whole room sharing from the very beginning, and more it's about, you know, this is kind of your brother or your sister, and they're going to be with you, as opposed to, you know, baby being protected with mom and dad.
Yeah, I think room sharing is also interesting because my kids shared a room up until they were about 12, and then my son was really saying, I really don't want to share my room anymore. So then we made a wall in the same space so that they could have some physical privacy. But if you can't physically add a wall, you could have a curtain that they draw across. There needs to be like negotiations. So when do we turn the lights off? You know, are we going to read with a torch if someone wants to turn the light off earlier? So there's so many opportunities. And how can you make a shared room like personalized, so that, you know, there's maybe a shelf above each of the beds where they can put their special things, or you choose some neutral bed covers, but they have a special cushion or something that they, you know, add some personality to their side of the space. So I think that's something to think about. If I think it's probably a good use of space. They only usually sleep in their bedroom anyway, and then it might free up an extra room to be able to set up a playroom with the toys in a separate space. So it's definitely, I found it very useful and practical, and we don't have big homes in Holland, so that was, you know, by necessity, and it worked out fine.
Yeah, and we actually did the same. I mean, they were together until my daughter went off to middle school, which was like you, about 12. And this was just, and before, I mean, and we actually have, you know, 2 different rooms. So there was the possibility of separating them. And I had asked them several times, and they were just not interested. They actually enjoyed, you know, sharing the room together until, you know, my eldest being a girl, and, you know, it just became time to live in separate bedrooms. But it came, you know, it came from their own accord. So yes, I do encourage that, definitely. And it you know, helps them have cooperation as well. So so should we go on and answer? We still have about 15 minutes. So we have some more questions. We have Emmerlind. I'm sorry if I mispronounced, but Emmerlind has 2 boys, 4 and 2. They are lovely when they are alone. They obey the rules. They don't scream. They respect objects, all of this. But then when they are together, it is, you know, they fight almost all the time. And the mom feels like she is a referee. And she's just very tired of these conflicts. So her question is how to have a peaceful house when the siblings are in it together.
Well, there may be some, you know, arguments and things in the house, but the thing that I think she could be more calm about is not being triggered by it. So when we're triggered, we've usually become too emotionally involved in what's going on in the house, and then we can't be their guide. So in Montessori, we often talk about being a child's guide rather than being, you know, their slave or anything like this. We're trying to, again, move from referee to something that's more like a coach or a mediator, perhaps. But I mean, even a mediator, you might be too involved, but it's definitely that it's crossed her boundary. If she's always upset, she feels that it's not peaceful and that kind of thing. And she can just see, okay, they're having, is it that low level conflict like we were talking at the beginning, that they can sort this out themselves? Do I need to step in right now? Okay, they're arguing really loudly now. I need to remind them of the rule. And actually, I really found it refreshing when I had my kids are quite small, an Australian parenting guy called Michael Gross, he said, you can have a rule in your house that means no teasing, you know, that they're not, and that means that all those no, you know, you can just say, we don't have teasing in this house. And there's just like, oh, that can be a rule? Oh, that's so refreshing, because it's basically teaching kids to be kind to each other. It covers a whole lot of things, which is from kicking to pushing and all that kind of stuff. Is like, we're kind. It's okay to disagree, but we're kind to each other, you know, that kind of thing. And it's a strong one as well. And so I think that I would start to see how she could move back to that narrating and translating of the feelings, rather than feeling she has to, like when she's arbitrating the fights, that means she's deciding who's right and who's wrong. And the danger of that is that if she comes in and says, the 4-year-old's, look, I told you not to do that, and then the younger one thinks, she got away with it. So I'm the youngest in my family, and I know my elder sister always got in trouble for any argument, but I know that I was often at fault. And in my head, I'm thinking, she always gets in trouble and I get away with it. So you really don't want to take sides. So you don't want to be the referee deciding on what happens, but more like, I don't know how we're going to solve the problem. You could just say that a lot. Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. And my kids often tried to, you know, pull me into arguments. And I remember one February holidays, I was thinking, they are just what I call argy-bargying all the time, and it's escalating. And then I looked at myself and I realized I was getting involved in every single dispute, you know, trying to negotiate, telling them to be nice, no. And the more I was intervening, the more that things were escalating. So I did a little bit of self-reflection. What do I teach the parents that come to my class? And immediately the whole atmosphere changed, because I wasn't getting involved. And so it doesn't seem, it's just really interesting how we can feed the energy and make them fight more because
Yes.
they're thinking, oh, we're getting a reaction and mum's getting involved, and then she takes sides, and then there's the fallout from that because then they hate you, and then you're getting involved in the argument that had nothing to do with you in the first place.
Right. And so it would be, it would be work on mom to get out, or try to get out of the role of the referee and really be just the commentator of seeing what you're, telling the story of what you're seeing. And it is a little bit harder because your 2-year-old, might not have also the words and the maturity to kind of, express what's really going on. So it's really important, again, to just remind them that you have faith in them, that they can figure this out, and also have those conversations outside of the moment about how, you've noticed that there's a lot of screaming, and that can be, when you say there's a rule of no teasing, there can be also, kind of rules of, we use indoor voices, we use quiet voices, because that screaming might also be getting you a little bit triggered as well. So, and actually, speaking of triggers, we have a question here. Could you recommend things to read on how to manage our triggers better? I find I'm not good at this because I'm a more emotional person.
That's brilliant. There's actually a podcast that I love called Unruffled by Janet Lansbury, who we mentioned earlier. And having her in your ears and hearing what she would say, basically her whole podcast is called Unruffled. She wants you to remain, supportive, but not getting that emotionally involved into it. And I think it's also recognizing what's your responsibility as well. Because I remember reading a quote when my kids were small, and it said, the aim of being a parent is not to make your kid happy, but it's to help them through everything that life throws at them, the good times and celebrating with them, but also the difficult times. And that's when I think we show up as parents, is when something doesn't go our child's way, and we can still be there and support them with love. Oh, yeah, you're really disappointed that you didn't get invited to that party. Oh, you're really sad because your balloon flew away, and just being there as this rock, basically. So sometimes a visual image can help you. Like, if you like that, you can kind of think, yeah, I'm their rock, I'm not touched by this. Another one that I've come up with is like pretending you're in a marshmallow. And so you've got this buffer between, I'm going to sit in my marshmallow, and I'm going to see if I can not react to what's going on around me. And the commentating, the broadcasting technique that she uses, like, oh, I see that you're pulling that toy out of his hand and he's pulling it back. And, you're so busy trying to sportscast what's going on, you can't get emotionally involved. So there are a few things that I'd suggest. Hopefully that's useful. Have you got any specific tips you could recommend?
Well, to me, it's also comes back to the self-care. I think that's important, that when we take time to remind ourselves that we are doing the very best we can, and to have, kind of some tools for ourselves to take deep breaths, to, sometimes in my meditations, I just imagine myself in this golden egg, like there's nothing that can, trigger me or bother me. So it's kind of putting ourselves in also a situation, kind of emotionally and spiritually, where we are going to observe, and we are going to do our best to model and give these life skills to our children. And, I don't have to react, and just kind of reminding ourselves of that. It's a mind game that we play on ourselves.
A bit of an advantage, because we do 250 hours of observation and more in our training, where we're actually learning to become an observer and not be reactive. So instead of subjectively saying, okay, they're arguing about that toy, you can just practice writing down, he walks in, he takes something off the shelf, he kneels down, he uses his right hand, he places it here. And maybe that's something that you could practice, is actually this observation in very objective. As if you were a camera on the wall, you're describing everything you see, as opposed to analyzing and getting into judgment and those kind of things.
Exactly. With the parents that I work with, I actually give them a lot of exercise around observation, and I call it being a scientific observer. So really being the observer without judgment, without preconceived ideas or expectations, and like you say, just really witnessing what is going on, and and being able to just describe that and not the emotions. And you can have, you know, in your journal, you can have a column that is for the emotions. Like, I'm really feeling, you know, it's making me anxious, or, you know, I don't feel it's fair, whatever. But those are judgments. And so to not, you know, use them to kind of intervene and also for your triggers. So.
And one more thing, sorry, I keep thinking of things as well.
Yeah.
But if when things go wrong and maybe you lose it, you shout, you whatever, is that's an opportunity to apologize, and then make a note in a journal or a notebook. Okay, I'm going to think about that later when the kids are in bed, or I'm going to talk it to my friend or my partner or somebody and think, what could have I done better next time? Because it's just, there's no mistakes. It's just learning and improving, because kids are going to do it again. They always seem to be one step ahead of us. So, you know, taking some time to reflect on how you can do it better. It's also okay. Like, that's the thing that's triggering me right now. If you have the same thing trigger you 5 days in a row, that's something that you need to work on.
Exactly. So let's do maybe one more question.
Did you see Miriam's come in as well?
Do what?
Did you see Miriam's question come in as well? I added one more in.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
you did add. Yes, you did. How do you make sure the first child gets enough attention after the second one is born? What were your strategies as mothers? I feel sometimes sad that I cannot split myself into halves. That is a hard one, and that is part also, I think, of our mommy guilt of, you know, thinking that we have to give them equal time, and it's important to, I think, set aside some special time for the older one. I know for me, there's 4 years difference, so it was, I think, a lot easier because you know, my eldest one would go off to preschool. I was home with the baby and such. When I went back to work, actually, when my youngest was 3 months, so that became a little bit more difficult. But you just you know, maybe, you know, your husband can take care of the baby for an afternoon when you go with the oldest one. When the baby is asleep, you make sure that you can spend some time with the older one. And then for me, it's not necessarily like making, you know, giving your attention to the older one so much, but it's really involving them in things around the home and asking for help. And that is a wonderful way to spend valuable time and to be able to connect as well, and involving them in the care of the newborn and such.
And I actually had mummy guilt.
Any thoughts?
I actually had mummy guilt the other way around, where I remember turning up to the early childhood center and saying, I just don't spend any time with my baby. You know, I'm so busy with the toddler. And then the nurse said, but look at her. She's watching him and he's running around the class, running around the room as we're talking. And she has 2 people who are kind of, you know, her source of, you know, interest and can engage with her. And she's more than trying to keep up with him. So don't worry, you know, it's really okay. And it's a little bit like you said with the candles. Not only is our love spread, but we are enough as we are, and we'll be available soon. We take turns. They learn. I remember they both wanted to talk at one time, and then I can say, oh yeah, let's let Emma finish, and then you can have a turn talking. You know, oh, you want to cuddle, and I'm cuddling Emma right now. I'm really finishing my cuddle. And then, okay, now it's your turn. And, you know, really like being okay with having to share, because if they sense a tiny little bit of guilt, they will work it. They will like, okay, I'm going to see if that works. And, you know, make us work really, really hard at it. But when we can be really solid, I am enough. Imagine you have 4 children. You know, you can't be there for every little dispute that comes up. You're really more taking on that guide leadership role. And that's what you become when you become a parent of 2. It's not just the one-on-one time, but it's the leader of the family that you take on, you and your partner.
Yeah. And I know for me personally, it's funny how things have ended up, but so there's 4 years difference with my 2. and my eldest has gone off to college and has moved out of the home. So now my second one is an only child, and he gets all of my attention. So it's come back for circle, and I remember him actually making that comment when she had left, saying, I kind of like being an only child. Like, he was now getting all of that attention. So it always works out. It's,
There's one other
need
question
to go easy on ourselves.
Yeah, there's one other question
Yes.
we didn't quite get to, but the first part of it I think we've covered, which is how to act when one of the siblings pushes, bites, and pinches the other. But she did also ask about a more detailed example about, instead of giving equal time, give time according to need. And this is something that's in the Siblings Without Rivalry book. And I think in the book, for example, they have an example of a mum getting ready for a little boy's birthday party, and the younger one saying, Mummy, I need your help. And she feels guilty. And so she says, okay, yeah, no, I'll try and share myself. And she isn't really doing either of them any help because she's really trying to split herself into two, a bit like Miriam kind of says. But instead, instead of feeling torn, what you can do is, okay, I'm really going to give according to need as opposed to having to give equally. And so I'm going to, okay, well, right now I'm working on his party, and it's really important because it's this weekend. And then as soon as we're done, I'm going to do what you want to do. And, a young child who just wants to interrupt, you can teach them to put their hand on your shoulder so that they wait their turn and all these kind of things. But I just do not believe that equals equal, because their birthday party will come up 6 months later maybe, and then you'll need to spend more time with them. Kind of like you said, Jeanne-Marie, now I spend more time with Emma because her brother is busy studying a lot and doing exams and working his first little job and things like that. So I'm spending more time with the younger one. So it's not only in terms of need, it's in terms of timing, age, there are the different things. And we even talk about maybe not, if you have to buy trainers for one of the kids, that not everyone needs to buy trainers that day. It's just like when your trainers also need replacing, then you know that you'll get yours. And they learn, oh yeah, I don't need for everything. I don't need to have equal. I don't need a new toy because he's got a new toy. Even on birthdays, you don't have to buy a separate present for the little sibling because they miss out. It's like they'll learn that it's not their birthday today. And if someone
exactly. And that's that's reality too. I think sometimes we want to make things, smooth things out and make things better for them, but it's reality. It's just, that's part of it. Your birthday is not every day like all the other birthdays, or like you're saying, to buy something for one, you have to buy it for the other one. No, it's it's modeling all of that. So yes. Perfect. Well, I think that we have, we're almost done. I really want to, there is one more question that came in. Let me see. When she gets frustrated with things, she throws and screams, and she can really be a handful. So this is probably another topic, more positive discipline. And also there was another question earlier that we did not talk about, a child wanting to hurt things and such, a 2-year-old. I think these are good questions that we will keep for maybe the June show, and we will do one more on positive discipline. What do you think, Simone?
Sure, there's always questions on handling children's behavior, so I think that could be really useful.
Yes.
So everyone, we're going to start wrapping it up, but before we go, you've got something new on your website that you wanted to share with people.
It's not new. It's something that we were going to send with the email for the replay. It's just I created a little 21 Tools of Positive Discipline. It's a little ebook. So I will send the link. It's a little opt-in. It's a free little opt-in, and I will send that to you, and then you will get more information as I get it. It's something that I have found to be useful. It's something that I had and that I always share with parents. And then one day I went back to a family's home, and she had framed it and put it in 2 different places in the home. And I thought, okay, so this is, this is good good information, and it was useful. So I just kind of recreated that for all of you. So we will send that out with the replay email.
Cool. And I'll also add a link to a Montessori for Babies webinar that I'm going to be running this week on Thursday. Oh, sorry.
That's right. Yes.
Thursday. So that one's going to be lots of fun. And it's for people who are pregnant, expecting their next baby or their first baby right up to around 6 months. And we'll look at how you can apply some of these principles from birth, because people are sometimes come to me with toddlers and then say, oh, I wish I had have known about this earlier. So it's really an opportunity to start to be much more conscious about how you prepare the environment, the activities you can do with them, how you can teach them language and movement and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Wonderful.
So we have to mark our calendars as well, Jeanne-Marie, for the next live call, which is going to be on Friday,
June
the 30th.
30th. Yes, 30th of June. And we will discuss offline what the topic is, but I have a feeling it's going to be setting boundaries, positive discipline, and such. And then we have exciting news: is the show in July will be the 27th, and it will actually be live from Prague. Both Simone and I will be in Prague for the International Montessori Congress, and so we will do our best to be able to broadcast live from the Congress itself. So very excited about that.
Jeanne-Marie, I love that in the chat room, Caroline said that she loves the mobiles in your background, very inspirational, and she wants to start working on making a Minari for her new baby. But thank you everyone for joining us today live on the call. There were lots of you, and we didn't get to all the questions, which just means we'll have to join us again next month, and we'll talk about boundaries, limit setting, discipline, and all of those kind of good things.
Yes, wonderful. See you next time.
Good night, Jeanne-Marie. Bye-bye.
Bye.